and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson, and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hey, I am DJ Ross. I am in Mountain View, California.
Each week on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. It is week 3 of the summer Backlog Attack, and we're playing John Wick Hex again, and Burly Men at Sea.
Wait, you're playing John Wick Hex again? I thought you hadn't played it before.
It occurred to me that I probably should have emphasized the comma on that a little more.
Okay, I see what's happening.
John Wick Hex, comma, again, comma, and Burly Men at Sea.
Again,
yeah.
Weird.
John Wick, Burly Men.
Burly John Wick.
Again.
You have to do this all episode.
Right, exactly.
Get
Is
ready.
this the whole show?
Yeah.
Yep.
This is it.
This is the whole thing. So the backlog's killing me this year, DJ. We normally time this thing specifically for a summer lull in the video game release calendar, and that is absolutely not the case this year. There are so many games out right now I want to play.
I know. I keep seeing like, oh, this game came out and this game came out. I'm like thinking to myself, oh, Randy wants to play both of those. I wonder what he's going to do.
Yep.
I wonder how many games he's going to play this week.
Can't even make eye contact with Psychonauts 2 right now. I have to try to save that for early September.
Wow. The discipline. Just impressive.
Yeah. I do it all for you. All for you, DJ.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I'm touched.
But yeah, it has been a tough month. We really need to coordinate on timing on these things a little bit better.
Yeah. Well, good thing September is looking free.
It really. This is gonna 6-hour episodes of us just catching up on everything.
Yeah.
Yep. There was somebody on Reddit who was like, I really like really long podcasts. What podcasts can you recommend that have like 2.5 hour long episodes? And I'm like, well, we have like 1 or 2 of those, but it's certainly not a consistent thing. I don't know that we could do 2.5 hours. Between. Yeah. That's a lot.
I definitely cannot do 2.5 hours. We'd have to talk about something else. There'd be like an intermission where it would just be like, playing some elevator music. We'd come back and we talk about like Tron for an hour and a half.
Be all the stuff that we talk about before we start recording. We would just have to hit record.
Yeah, we could just start recording that. I don't know if anybody would care.
The minute we get on the mic,
For the record, we talked about Star Trek for like half an hour. And I wasn't even the instigator. Randy just brought it up himself. So I was very impressed.
It was very hot in Pennsylvania this weekend, like obscenely hot and rainy because we were getting some of the side effects of that little tropical depression thing that was happening. So Sarah and I kind of holed up in the house on Sunday and did some housekeeping and stuff like that, and then just cranked up the air conditioner and watched movies on TV. So
watched a bunch of Star Trek.
Yeah, IFC was showing Star Trek 1, 2, and 3. We got there in time for 2, which is the Wrath of Khan, correct?
Yeah.
And departed midway through 3, which is the Search for Spock.
Yeah,
Wrath of Khan,
about right.
Very entertaining movie. It still holds up. A little goofy.
Wrath of Khan,
a little hammy.
Yeah.
But,
it's William Shatner. What are you going to do?
He's not even the goofiest part of it. It's the Ricardo Montalban with his manly bosoms kind of hanging out of his costume, just hamming it up. Just really just chewing scenery in every scene he's in.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, but it was very entertaining. And then pivot to Search for Spock, and it's not a great movie. Not good at all.
Not good.
Yeah. So we checked out at that point. But yeah. I engaged in some Star Trek related activity, so I felt obligated to inform DJ.
I get it. You engaged in it.
As required by law. I had to inform DJ and Paul that I was watching Star Trek.
Oh, good. Man, I didn't watch any Star Trek this weekend. I feel like I'm not doing my part.
I mean, in your defense, you probably have had multiple weekends in your life where there was some Star Trek activity. Right.
Yeah. I'm always watching Star Trek in spirit.
This is new for me. Yeah. Interesting to watch The Wrath of Khan and have recently just seen sort of the new Star Trek, J.J. Abrams' world, where they sort of revisit the Khan thing with Benedict Cumberbatch. I like them. I like those new movies. I'm a fan of those new movies. I can see if
I don't know why you're so open about that. Why you just tell people?
We're just completely shameless about it.
Yeah. Just openly admits it.
I think they're entertaining. Even the one that the Fast and Furious guy did, I thought was a fine movie.
A fine movie. Well,
a fine piece of popcorn summer entertainment.
Everyone's entitled to their opinion.
They are. I'm going to stick to that.
I just love how they were like, well, what if Khan was a white guy?
I mean, Cumberbatch as a villain is. I would go on that. I think he was just a very imposing, sort of cerebral antagonist. I thought he did a fine job.
I think you're
a fine job at a fine movie.
All right, yeah. Like I was saying, everybody can enjoy whatever they want to enjoy.
Yep,
it's fine. No judgment, at least not publicly.
What did you enjoy this weekend, DJ? Any questionable entertainment? Any questionable soft drinks consumed?
Yeah, no questionable soft drinks. That was good.
Good for you.
Kind of a big weekend. I bought a PlayStation 5.
What?
Controller.
Oh, okay.
Still have never seen a PlayStation 5, the actual thing in the wild.
I'm fairly certain they don't exist. I think it's just
I'm beginning to, believe all the conspiracy theories out there.
Just a ruse.
Yeah, but I have this controller. Actually, I've had this for a while now, but I wanted to spend some time with it so I could actually talk about it. Mm-hmm. Although I had to preface this with, it's going to be kind of an incomplete review of it because, like I was saying, I don't actually have a PS5, so can't really speak to the fancy new stuff going on with this controller.
Are you using it with your PS4?
I'm using it for, and you're gonna roll your eyes, pretty much just to play Final Fantasy XIV on my PC.
Oh, gotcha.
Because I usually use a DualShock 4, the PS4 controller. Mm-hmm. And those things just
fine controller.
A fine controller. I think maybe my favorite controller. Actually, no, definitely my favorite controller.
Just flimsy. Just not a good lifespan on those.
They don't build up very well. Yeah. And to their credit, they've gotten better about it. And I mean, this just sort of speaks to how often or how many of these I've gone through that I can tell that they're getting sturdier throughout the PS4's lifespan.
But they're also, I think I heard this from you, they're also getting harder to find as sort of the era of the PS4 kind of wanes. You've had some trouble sourcing them lately.
Yeah, no, and especially I think we're feeling the impacts of whatever, is it like a chip shortage or a processor shortage? Are those the same thing?
Semiconductor.
Semiconductors are in short supply because of the pandemic.
It's a partial conductor. It's not a complete conductor. It's just a semiconductor. Yeah.
Maybe they should just buy the whole conductor and split them in half.
Just kind of carve it up. Yeah, that's the way to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Trust me, I'm an electrical engineer.
It's like, buy pizza by the slice. That's not economically viable. You buy the whole pizza.
Buy the whole thing.
Yeah. And you find some friends to share with, or you kind of portion it out over the week. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the way to go.
You pay $2 a slice or $5 for the whole pie.
I'm going to have to talk to the guys at Best Buy. Just be like, up until now, I've just been buying the one controller, but I want the bulk discount with the full conductor.
Right, exactly.
Where are you keeping them?
Yep. Yeah. Go check it back.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I know you got them back there. Mm-hmm. I know that's how it works.
I can come help you look.
But yeah, so anyway, my latest DualShock 4 broke once again. And to their credit, this one I think lasted the longest out of all of them. I think it was over a year.
Wow.
So that was cool. I thought maybe they had just fixed them at this point. But no, eventually death comes to us all. And I couldn't find a replacement. And I was trying to figure out what to do, because normally I just take these things back to the store and say, hey, it's broken, give me another one, and they'll swap it out. But you can't do that if they don't have any on hand. So I thought, well, I could just keep using this broken controller until they come back in stock. Who knows when that is? Or I could just begrudgingly upgrade to the next generation and get the PS5 controller on the replacement plan, because I don't know how shoddy these things are. But I figure there's going to be a day where they just don't make DualShock 4s anymore, right? So it's going to happen sooner or later.
Yeah. And are the PS5s plentiful? You didn't have a problem finding a PS5. Well, the PS5s are not plentiful, but the PS5 controllers are.
Oh, yeah. No, you can just walk into a store and buy a controller if you want to.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
And why would I?
Colors. I don't know. I mean, you've been on the lookout for a PS5. Maybe you've seen the controllers hanging out there.
I have. I got to the queue the other night. PlayStation. I got a tweet that the PlayStation Direct had formed a queue for people to get in and buy a PS5. And I got in the queue. It said your wait time is about an hour. And I went, ugh. Ugh. So I plugged my phone in. I just kept tapping the screen every couple of seconds to keep it awake. Didn't want to miss anything. Finally got it. Like, seriously, no joke. Like an hour and 5 minutes later, got into the room and they were sold out of PS5s.
Ugh.
Yep. I could buy a controller in a variety of colors or a copy of Ratchet and Clank and nothing to play it on.
Yeah, you just stare at it.
Yeah. Just sort of rub it against my body.
Whatever you do with Ratchet and Clank in the privacy of your own home.
Sure, absolutely. It's between me and Clank.
Yeah. And Ratchet. I don't know how it works.
If you're into that kind of thing. Yeah. I'm not some kind of pervert, TJ.
I mean, you just want him to be included.
Anyway, sorry, I interrupted your story with gross stuff.
No, it's fine. I mean, no judgment. But anyway, so I've been playing Final Fantasy with this new controller for the last couple of weeks. I don't know if I like it.
Oh, wow.
It's hard to tell how much I'm missing out not having like the new. I hear the like whatever haptic feedback they have is actually pretty good, which obviously is not supported at this point in Final Fantasy. I don't imagine there are any PS4 games that do it. So to me, it's just like basically just a regular old controller, which is very similar to the DualShock 4. But first of all, it's noticeably bulkier than the DualShock 4.
Oh, really?
Doesn't really look like it is, but when you pick it up and after you've been using it for a while, it is like maybe it's just the shape of it, but I start to get a little like fatigued after holding it for a while. It reminds me of when the Xbox came out and they had that massive controller.
The Duke. The Duke. The huge controller, yeah.
They complained that like they were getting cramps because this thing was so unwieldy. I just think to myself, oh, maybe that's what that was like, or this is what that was like, just having a controller that's just a little too large in some dimensions, or just maybe it's just not what I'm used to. I don't know. But that's weird.
Yeah, I didn't get a sense that there was a significant scale up in size between the PS4 and PS5 controllers.
I mean, it's not huge. Just looking at them side by side, you probably wouldn't even be able to tell. But after you hold it, and especially if you go back to the DualShock 4, just, oh, yeah, this one is definitely a slight bump up in size. But the thing that's really bumming me out is the triggers have noticeably more resistance than the DualShock 4 triggers do. Oh. And I think it's subtle, but after using it for a while, you start to notice, especially because in Final Fantasy, you're pretty much like everything you do, you use one of the triggers. It's like a combination of one of the triggers and another button. So after a few hours of this, I notice like my fingers are definitely a little like more tired after using this new controller than the old one.
Right.
And
interesting.
I'm just like, I don't know about that.
And that resistance, I think, sort of ties into that haptic feedback, right? I think there's supposed to be something in PS5 games where there's sort of resistance on those triggers that you're supposed to be able to sort of feel, right?
I know there's like something additional going on in the PS5 triggers compared to the DualShock 4.
Right. And in a game that sort of is programmed to take advantage of it, on a device that would take advantage of it, that might be a feature. Yeah.
And I can see how that would be useful, especially, they reminded me a lot of the Xbox 360 triggers, or I guess just any 360, or no, any Xbox controller since then, which have had, they're like much more trigger-like, just in sort of the amount of resistance and just the shape of them.
Kind of, they're springier too. I always feel like the Xbox controllers have a little more. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's just sort of that resistance.
Yeah. But I think if you're playing a racing game or something, that's probably desirable. Or if you're playing a shooter or something, maybe you want that real like trigger feeling, like you're actually shooting a gun or something.
Yeah.
But on this one, I'm just like, oh man, I don't know. I really miss the old DualShock 4 sort of setup. And it's getting to the point where I'm kind of having this panic about it because just the thought of using this thing going forward, and like, because clearly, like, probably going to be playing Final Fantasy for the long term, or who knows? Maybe the new expansion will just be terrible. Maybe I'll just quit cold turkey at the end of the year. But man, the DualShock 5, or that's not even what it is. The Dualsense.
That sounds right. Yep.
It's just making me miss that older controller. But I'm thinking, like, who knows when the old ones are going to come back in stock, if they ever do.
Yeah.
Should I be like stocking up on these things if I see one?
So I was just thinking you might need to plan a road trip and just sort of like hit every Best Buy and GameStop on the Western Seaboard and like just gobble up anyone you can possibly find.
Yeah, I mean, and it's sounds crazy, but I've been thinking about it, and that's not. It's like you can't just casually do that. These are not cheap pieces of hardware,
right?
But it's just got me thinking, like, oh man, I don't know. I don't know if it's like going to be good for my hands just playing with this thing, just pulling these triggers all the time. Should you just go back to the old controller? Wish they could just make one that would last for more than a year.
Yeah, well, that's surprising. A surprising turn of events. It's not what I was expecting you to say.
Yeah, I'm surprised as well, because there's never really been a controller that's come out. Well, I've had this reaction where I just go, well, this seems like a downgrade. But yeah, so I don't know what's going on with this one. Maybe if I had all the like the full features and everything, it would just like convince me. But as far as just the basic controller design goes, I think it's kind of a step back from the last generation. Do
you have a Switch Pro controller?
I don't, no.
That is a very fine controller.
Okay.
I like the controller a lot. I mean, I have hundreds of hours of video games played on mine, and I've never had any issues with it, no fatigue or concerns. The thing I dislike a bit about it is that it's got the asymmetrical sticks. But
yes, yeah, I thought about it, because I know you can connect one of those to like Steam or whatever.
Yeah.
And I feel like those, like Nintendo makes pretty solid stuff, apart from, the Joy-Cons and all that. But yeah, like given the choice, I like the symmetrical layout over the asymmetrical one.
Yeah, it's a bummer. I mean, the Pro controllers are plentiful. They're always on sale. I always feel like I see a little pop up for them for $45 every now and then or something like that. So those might be a little easier to track down than your PS5 controllers. But if you're not sold on those sticks, then it's probably not worth the adventure.
Yeah, I don't know. I've been trying to figure out if there's a good long-term replacement for the DualShock 4, because, like, stockpile or no, eventually they're going to go away.
Right.
I've been looking at, like, I have an 8-bit-do, or 8-bit-do, whatever controller that I'm a fan of. I don't like it as much as the DualShock 4, but maybe more than the DualSense. Jury is still a little out on that. But, yeah, just, like... looking at a lot of controllers this weekend is what ended up happening.
Yeah, I know. I have a lot of strong opinions about video game controllers. I think they're mostly, okay.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like most of them are okay. It's just when I've been using the DualShock 4 for so long, just any sort of difference at all kind of just stands out.
feels like a downgrade, right?
Yeah. I'm just like, why can't you just at least maintain the status quo on these controllers?
Yeah. I mean, I have a couple of 360 controllers around the house that I still plug into the rare occasions I play a PC game or something like that. Mm-hmm. They just work the first time every time, you know what I mean? So I have not, I've certainly moved on from the 360. It's hooked up in the house somewhere for Rock Band just in case, but I don't think there's a controller anymore because I stole it to play something on my laptop at some point. It's still sitting here in my office. So yeah, if you find a good one, you kind of stick with it. I support you on that.
Yeah, 360 controller is pretty good.
Yeah.
Except for that D-pad, but that's, I actually, while I was at the store, they had the Xbox Series X controller out on display. So I got to try that out a little bit. And the D-pad I felt like was pretty good. I was certainly miles beyond the original 360 D-pad.
Yeah. Again, D-pad's one of those things people have, again, very strong opinions on. And again, I find them all fine. But I don't play, I don't play fighting games or anything like that. So it's not like, I need a good D-pad. As long as I can access my inventory or deploy whatever power I have mapped up on the D-pad or whatever.
Right, yeah.
I'm cool with that, yeah.
I don't know. I like a lot of my generation just grew up playing Nintendo, Super Nintendo games where all you had was the D-pad. So you have these these very fully formed opinions about this thing. Which I feel like PS3 D-pad, not great. I feel like they got it right with the PS4.
It's a little squishy, right? If I remember correctly, it just didn't have a lot of good feedback.
Yeah. Actually, the the PlayStation D-pad since the beginning were never terrific. I felt like the PlayStation 4 was the first one where I was like, oh, this is actually good. And to their credit, the DualSense D-pad seems to be okay.
I think the PS4 got credit for being actually good on a number of checkpoints, I think. Yeah. Particularly coming out of the PS3 era, which, again, was an alright console and had some really good games, but definitely had its own particular quirks.
It had its quirks, yeah. And I've actually... It's funny you mentioned Star Trek, because it made me think. I was like, man, I really feel like they just nailed every aspect of the PS4. PS3, we all know what happened there. But going into the PS5 generation, it was like, seems like they've made more questionable decisions this time around. I think like everybody sees it. So it got me thinking like, man, it's just the Star Trek thing. Like only even numbered PlayStations are good. The rest of them are just, I don't know. With the exception of the PlayStation 1, because that was pretty good. But
yeah, of course.
Yeah, PS5, it's just a weird situation all around.
Interesting. Yeah. So we should pivot to some of the games that we're covering for our Backlog Attack, just to catch everybody kind of up. We are inviting you, the members of our community, to attack your backlogs with us this summer if you're not, otherwise engaged with all of the awesome games that are coming out this month. We would love to play along with you. We've got a little competition going here to what? Dig into some of your backlog games. By September 5th. We would love for you to post a game over screen on our Discord. You can tweet it to us. You can email us. Include a little 10-word sort of summary of your experience with the game, a review or something similar. What did I say last week? A dirty limerick? Anything like that? Whatever you want to do. Yeah. The most amazing feat of backloggery this summer, as sort of determined by DJ and I, will win the upcoming video game of your choice. The window is closing here. Like I said, you've only got until September 5th. So if you're going to play along, we would love for you to jump in and update us on some of the games you've been playing this summer.
Yeah.
You can go to VGHangover.com for more info on all this stuff.
Yep. Check out the contest posts. All the info is there. But yeah, make sure you clear out some of those games before September 5th, because that is the deadline. Easy contest.
Super easy contest. Yeah, absolutely. I'll start with Burly Men at Sea. I mentioned this a couple weeks ago when I sort of talked about kind of wanting to play this game. It sat on my Vita. I have it on my Vita for years. Never played it.
Yeah.
And then it went on sale on the Switch, and I bought it. Still didn't play it. So it has sat on 2 devices as a download for probably too long. And in sort of researching the games I wanted to play this summer on my Backlog Attack, I discovered that this game is only 35 minutes long.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I played it.
Oh, good.
And in fact, I went back and I played it one more time, just because I wanted to see if I could make some different decisions or take it down a different path. And unfortunately, it's not quite built that way. It's a pretty linear experience, but it has the illusion of an adventure game where maybe you can kind of go different ways or anything like that. But again, it's only a half an hour long, so at best, I have an hour invested in this thing. Burly Men at Sea. It is a little storybook almost. It has sort of the sort of structure of a parable or a fable, where you've got 3 sailors, each with a very distinct personality. One is very hasty, one is cautious, and one is, I forget what the personality of the third one is.
He only tells lies.
Right. But they find a mysterious scroll, a map, and decide to sort of go out in search of adventure to find out sort of what is at the X on the map. And they stop at different islands, and they get eaten by a whale, and they meet a mysterious stranger on a boat, and et cetera, et cetera. So they encounter different people, and all of them, the sailors, the burly men at sea, sort of respond to these things, as is characteristic of their personality traits. So you spend a lot of time kind of as the consumer of this, kind of clicking around things in the environment, trying to sort of get them out of trouble. Like I said, you get eaten by a whale, so you have to find your way out of the whale. So you go left, go right in the whale, click on the little thing, see if something happens.
Standard, procedure for exiting a whale.
Sure, right. Yeah, how do I get out of this whale? But yeah, it's cute. It's a little, very slight kind of storybook fairy tale, creatively told. It looks like, What does it look like? It's a very sparse, very sort of Nordic. It has a very sort of IKEA-style kind of cleanliness to it, where there's not a lot going on. Everything looks like it's sort of cut out of primary colors, colored pieces of construction paper. It's just a very efficiently told, light story that's kind of cute. Kind of wraps up in a neat way, and you kind of go, oh, that was nice.
Yeah.
35 minutes later. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So if you see this thing pop up on the eShop for a couple of bucks, you've got 35 minutes you want to kill and want just sort of a very light, very entertaining kind of piece of story, then there is this thing called Burly Men at Sea that I would suggest.
And it has the illusion of choice, but it's a very similar story every time.
Yeah, the 2 times I played through it, there were not a lot of detours. There were just a little, there's an island you stop at that has a couple of houses on it. And the first time I played it, like the first time somebody gave me, like I talked to the person at the first house and the second house and the third house, they were like, you know what you should do? You should go here and do this thing. And I immediately left the island and went and did that thing. Mm-hmm. The second time I played it, I kept going down the island and there were 2 more houses I could go into. So I was like, oh, well, I just have to check, the corners of this game a little bit better. And there were a couple other places like that where I found, I could get an extra little line of dialogue or, search a separate room for a trigger, a little clue. So it wasn't additional stuff. It wasn't different pathways or a different ending or anything like that. It was just more content.
Is this the game? I don't know if I'm confusing this with something else, but I think there was some game that was developed sort of so the developers would have this thing that was essentially like a storybook that they could go through with their kids. I mean, this sounds very much like that, but I don't know if it was this is the specific game.
I'm not sure if that's that specific. This is this specific game. Yeah, it could be this. It's very family friendly. Uh-huh. It's like I said, it's a very light sort of brisk piece of entertainment. It could almost be a story that you would share with your kids, but I don't know if this is that.
Yeah, the thing you mentioned about having it sort of like the opportunity to go do something and then just deciding on a whim to go do that really sounds to me like something that like a kid would latch onto. Like if you imagine telling them a story and then they just go, oh, and what about this? Tell me more about this. And so they just turn it into like essentially a side quest in the game.
Yeah. It doesn't really feel super structured like that. That was mostly my sort of decision making. I think it could be sort of interestingly served as like a choose your own adventure, and sort of arrive at kind of different destinations and different pathways there, and maybe a couple different endings or something like that. The game is not that thing. It is very much a sort of linear kind of fairy tale.
Yeah,
well,
that's cool. I mean, that reminds me of that. I hate this title. Wide Ocean, and there's a jacket. 2 adjectives.
Wide Ocean Big Jacket.
Wide
right?
Ocean Big Jacket. Yeah.
Yep.
The worst. Seriously, guys. But I really enjoyed. Like that was also just kind of like it might have been like half an hour or an hour. Just
I think you're right.
For the most part, very linear story experience.
Yeah, and that was like a coming of age kind of. It felt like a very personal thing. Like this could have almost been kind of autobiographical.
Yeah. But there weren't like harrowing decisions you had to make. You never had to do a quick time event, at least not that I recall.
Right,
but
I agree.
Just like kind of an alternative like media experience.
Yeah, definitely. This creator had a story to tell, and this was sort of the means of telling it. Yeah, I would agree with that. Absolutely. I think that's probably a nice compliment to the Burly Men at Sea experience. Absolutely.
Do they make you do any like weird gamey things other than navigating your way out of the whale? Not
really. No. No. Like I said, from a video gamey perspective, it's talk to all the villagers, and when you're in the whale, don't just search to the left, search to the right too, and it's stuff like that. It's if you've played any video game before that had hidden pickups or something like that, this game doesn't have those, but you have a muscle memory for being able to navigate your way through a video game, and Burly Men at Sea is structured in a similar way.
Oh, well, sounds cool.
Yeah. I also played Wick Hex, this week, which is a much more substantial experience. This is, unsurprisingly, sort of a turn-based strategy game based on the John Wick franchise. This is the John Wick series of Keanu Reeves action movies. Mm-hmm. It's I don't know, it's kind of a weird and surprising proposition. It is made by Mike Bithell, who I like as a sort of video game developer, who has made kind of really interesting games before. He did Thomas is Alone. Yeah. He did Volume, which I really like. It's probably the closest experience to sort of playing John Wick Hex. He did the Subsurface Circular.
Yeah, that one's really good.
Yeah. And there's a couple of those, right? Isn't there 2 or 3 of those?
One. Yeah. The other one was like, what was it? Quarantine Circular.
There you go. So him he wrote the game, is the sort of director, I guess, of the game, with all of this kind of star power. Like, it's got Austin Wintory doing the soundtrack. He did music for a bunch of video games. I think he did Assassin's Creed something, but probably best known as the guy who scored Journey, and all of those kind of That Game Company games as well. Troy Baker is the villain in this, is Hex. Yeah.
Oh, Hex is a guy.
It up. Hex is a person. Yeah.
I just assumed you were on like a hex grid.
You are that as well.
Oh, okay,
but the villain in the game is Hex. And he has kidnapped kind of your 2 compatriots from the John Wick movies, which are, I don't know their names in the movies, but it's Ian McShane is one of them. The guy from Deadwood and from American Gods. And the other actor is Lance Reddick, who was on a lot of things that I can't remember. He was on Fringe. He was in The Wire. There you go. That was the other one.
He's the guy from Destiny for all the youngins playing that game.
Oh, okay. Did not know that. But great character actors, also very good voice actors. They are. It's definitely a highlight when they sort of pop up and voice their characters in this. But yeah, there's all of this stuff, all these things that are like, wow, that's a lot. Somebody spent money on this.
Yeah, real weird when they announced that Mike Bithell was working on this.
Yeah, it feels like a paycheck for that dude. I hope he cleaned up.
Or maybe it was the other way around. It was like, the next game from Mike Bithell is a John Wick licensed like tactical game or whatever. I don't think it was like and directing the John Wick's game or John Wick. I keep wanting to call it John Wick's because it's got the hex on there. It's very confusing.
I understand.
But yeah, just kind of a departure going from these little indie titles to this thing with Keanu Reeves in it.
Right. Well, let me just clarify. Keanu Reeves is not in it.
What? Okay.
There is a visual representation of Keanu Reeves as John Wick. You in fact play as John Wick, but he does not voice his character.
Okay, I mean, I guess that's fine.
In fact, nobody does. He's a silent protagonist. So
I mean, he doesn't talk that much in the movies. So
no, he doesn't.
Fair,
no, not at all.
So that was actually very shrewd licensing. Just like, well, we're never going to be able to avoid voice acting for this. So who can we put in here?
Ian McShane and Lance Reddick apparently is the right answer, and Troy Baker, which is no slouch either. So
sure.
So yeah, they you cut back and forth between Lance Reddick and Ian McShane, sort of holed up somewhere, tied to a chair, being kind of interrogated, grilled by Hex, Troy Baker, and then it'll lead to another scenario as John Wick tears his way across the city to try to save his partners, his friends. So yeah, you do John Wick type things like shoot up a nightclub and, bust into a church that is also a hideout for bad guys, all to a very sort of kind of John Wick appropriate, super thumpy kind of techno beat. Mm-hmm. You get to do a lot of really kind of John Wick style kind of takedowns where you sort of like quickly go from like beating somebody in the face with the butt of your gun to shooting a guy who's walking through a door to doing a quick spin and taking another guy down and kind of throwing him on the ground and, shooting him and right. John Wick type things.
What else are you going to do?
Very fast things. But the game sort of makes these things approachable by not making it a shooter, which would be sort of the easy way out, I think, for a John Wick's game. You got me saying it now, a John Wick game.
Can't escape.
They make it turn-based, and you have a timeline where you have different time compartments that John Wick's moves kind of fit into, and your objective is to choose the move that will give you the advantage over your enemies. As enemies sort of appear on screen, appear on the grid, you have to make decisions about, can I get to that guy before he pulls his gun and shoots me? Can I get to this brawler before she punches me in the head and knocks me out? So you have to sort of go through your little list of moves and plug them into this little timeline at the bottom of the screen to try to get the upper hand in these scenarios. So you're not actually sort of like, push X to punch. You're really just sort of plugging things into a timeline that dictate the moves that John Wick will execute.
Yeah.
On top of that, you have to sort of figure out when he can sort of regain his focus, which sort of gives him a new series of moves, basically sort of fills him up with energy again. He kind of shakes his head off and kind of dusts himself off. If he's getting hurt or damaged, you have to sort of find a corner to hide in to bandage him up. So you have to do, maintenance type things to keep John Wick alive as well. But you're not doing these things as you would do them in an FPS. You're doing them in a very kind of surprising, kind of tactical way, by basically looking for opportunities in the timeline to be able to sort of maintain his health, his focus, and deploy moves that take down enemies that just stream in from all corners of the map.
Oh, so you would try and do that like in the middle, just doing other executions on these enemies? It's not like you kill everybody in the room and then you like go stand in the corner for a minute while more enemies filter in.
The opportunities for that are very few. You don't really get a lot of... the enemies in this are very persistent, and there are a lot of them, which feels like a John Wick movie.
Yeah,
it's just this parade of dudes chasing after you with guns. So you look for a pause. You look for, and again, everything's sort of happening on these little increments of time where across the room I can see a door that is halfway open, and there's a guy on the other side of the door with a gun, and there's a brawler who's just going to beat me if he gets anywhere near me, 8 or 9 spaces away. And I know that it'll take me 6 spaces to be able to bandage myself up. So you'll drop in that little bandaging mechanic just in time for the brawler to get to you. You'll sort of deploy your move to knock them out and push them onto the ground. And at that point, the guy with the gun has now got within firing range, and you have to decide, can I dodge? Can I roll? Can I get behind cover? Again, you're dropping moves essentially into the timeline to try to, again, keep John Wick alive and give him the advantage in these scenarios. It's overwhelming at first, but as you get further into it, you start to feel like a bit of a badass. Like John Wick, perhaps.
Yeah.
When you get really, really good at sort of reading the timeline, surveying the room, you have a little bit of a fog of war. If you're crouched behind things, you can't see nearly as far as if you're basically running through the center of the room. You're super exposed, obviously, in those scenarios. You have to be very careful. But again, it's a ton of kind of input and information that you're trying to sort of process to make the best choice you can to keep John Wick alive and make sure all the other guys are dead.
Yeah. That sounds really cool. This actually sounds like a very clever sort of format to make a John Wick's game.
It is. It is smarter than your average John Wick experience.
Yeah, because I think the inclination would be, it's an action game, and you're running around shooting a gun in third person, and maybe you'll do some cool John Wick stunt chains or whatever as you're playing it. But this feels like it feels like what must be going through his mind at the beginning of every shootout in those movies, where he goes, well, I'm going to jump over this thing, I'll take out this guy, and then I'll get the guy behind me.
Right. Yeah.
It must be awesome when it all plays out, like once you have the timeline all slotted in.
Yeah, the game that does 2 things that I think are really smart that sort of feed that observation is you get a planning mode where you have, at the beginning of a level, you have an overview. Like I said, that church is also sort of a nightclub kind of thing. The enemy, the bad guy, the boss, essentially, is sort of in his hideout at the center of the church, and you have a map, you have a pathway through. And you get, in advance, you get a certain number of credits to decide what kind of stashes, what kind of advantages you want to drop around. So you can spend 10 credits to put a health pack kind of halfway through the level under the package of bandages to help keep you alive. You can stash a gun for 6 credits. So you're trying to make good choices based on limited information to give yourself advantages where you might need them. More often than not, you're just picking up guns off of enemies. If you don't finish shooting all the bullets in a gun and you swap it for another gun, you waste all that ammo. You can't collect ammo or clips or anything like that. So again, trying to make good choices based on limited information and limited resources. So you get this kind of interesting planning stage and a certain number of credits to be able to sort of deploy these advantages for yourself, hopefully making good choices. The second part of it is at the end of a level, there's a replay button where you can hit a button and it just shows you essentially a movie of everything that you just queued up. Yeah,
that's what you want.
It looks a little goofy because a lot of it is sort of like half in a door, half out a door. Crouch, stand up, crouch, stand up. Like it's a little jerky and a little like it doesn't play nearly as fluidly as you would want a John Wick action sequence to play out, because it's still just you making kind of dubious video game choices sometimes.
Like, here's the one where I just clicked in the wrong spot and he turned around and, oh man, that's good.
It's a lot of me like crouch behind a thing, stand up, oh, there's a bad guy, crouch behind it again. So you get this sort of like pop-up, shit down kind of like jerky animation. A lot of the animations sort of play out very similarly. There's not a lot of variety to them, unfortunately. Again, I may be sort of betraying kind of the humble limitations of an indie game here, and that when John Wick knocks a dude out, it's the same animation every single time. When he sort of crouches and just does sort of like a left-handed kind of shoot across the room at a guy, it's kind of the same animation every single time. So it would be nice if there was more to that. It would be nice if it felt a little more fluid and a little more kind of bespoke given the situations that John Wick finds himself in, but it's not really that game, unfortunately. The solving the puzzle of kind of plotting all these things out on the timeline is super satisfying, and when it works out nicely, you feel like a badass, like I said.
Yeah.
But you can definitely see that, this is not a game somebody spent $60 million on.
Oh, man. I was just thinking it'd be so cool if they had, I don't know, some way to like scrub through all the different timelines you assemble. So by the end of it, you get like the cool, like, edited down version of like John Wick going through the environment, because then you could just like clip that out and people could post on social media like, oh man, check out John Wick taking out this room full of guys, and they have all the weird sequences where you're just like crouching too many times taken out. I think that would have been cool. I mean, I hope that would have been cool.
Yeah. That might exist at the end. I've not finished this thing yet, unfortunately. It's a pretty substantial game. And I've made some questionable choices, so I end up playing segments of levels over and over again. Or I realized I didn't stash my gun and my bandages in the right place, and I have to go back and try again. And so you learn by doing in a lot of ways in this. It's pretty sort of generous with save points at the beginning of levels, but if you get kind of further into an experience and kind of screw it up, you kind of have to go back to the beginning and try again.
Does it ever come down to like, oh, for this one you need to know that you have to stash like a health kit halfway through, or else you're just not going to make it through? Or those are more like bonuses? They're more like bonuses. They're more like nice to haves.
Okay. And they don't always sort of stash them on your normal, on like your clear path to the exit. In the nightclub, for example, this is early in the game. If you choose to sort of spend credits to hide a health kit in that level, they don't put it right in the walkway. They hide them in one of the bathroom stalls. So if you don't go explore the bathrooms, and of course there's a bad guy in there too, you're not going to find those bandages you sort of spent the credits to hide for yourself anyways. So they still make you work for it a little bit. It's not like they're dropping out of the sky.
Got it. So you're just like hedging a little bit.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, trust me, if those bandages were not there, it would have been a real dicey finish to that level. So I'm glad I made that choice. And I'm also glad I searched the bathroom. Because, that little blinking icon on the map that says exit here is real alluring. But I'm like, also, I didn't look in that room. What's in there? Yeah. So this is, without going on for another hour or two, this is a lot of fun. I'm pleasantly surprised by how much sort of thought has gone into making this John Wick experience. It could have, like you said, been a pretty disposable shooter. But kudos to Mike Bithell for leading it down a different path and trying to sort of, like you said, kind of get into the head of John Wick a little bit and make it something a little more challenging and a little more, I don't know, a little more of a kind of an orchestrated experience than your average kind of run and gun.
Yeah, that's cool. Is there any sort of like story component beyond just like kill the bad guy? I mean, that's basically every John Wick movie. But all of Mike Bithell's other games have had very interesting sort of narratives to go with them.
There hasn't been anything that I've found like that yet. No. No, nothing is super surprising. I mean, you know, I think if you watch a John Wick movie, you kind of know what you're getting, and in that way, this kind of fits into that. I like the structure of them not trying to sort of like shoehorn cutscenes into, you know, you shooting up the nightclub, that you get these kind of interstitials where it's, you know, your two allies strapped to a chair with the villain kind of interrogating them and telling stories about how badly he wants to sort of get John Wick. And this was his ruse for leading him to them and what the showdown is going to be like at the end and stuff like that. So you get kind of this build up and anticipation. You also get an opportunity to sort of have Ian McShane and Lance Reddick, you know, do their thing. So yeah, it's sort of pretty predictable in that regard. The surprise, I think, comes from the execution.
Yeah, well, that's probably fine.
Yeah.
Cool.
So if it's not apparent, I would recommend this. If you like, particularly if you like strategy games, not even if you like John Wick, I think that is secondary to this. But if you like a good, creative approach to a strategy game, I think this is pretty satisfying.
Yeah. The way you're describing it reminds me a lot of that the Transistor, that Supergiant game.
Oh, interesting. I did not get far with that, so I don't have that point of reference.
Yeah, you just like, you spend a lot of time, like on the surface it looks like an action game, but basically you would sort of freeze time and like go to one point on the map and do one move and then go somewhere else and do another one, and it would all play out. I think it would play out at the end after you had planned everything for your turn.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, so interesting sort of parallel.
Yeah.
On my list, I did not play Mega Man like I had originally planned for various reasons, but I grabbed another game from my backlog, which is I've been meaning to get to for a while, which is Again. That's the name of the game, is Again. It's by the developer Sing, C-I-N-G, who did Hotel Dusk and Last Window on the DS, these kind of like pseudo-noir mystery games. This one, I believe, came out after Hotel Dusk and before a few of the other games that they put out.
Mm-hmm. Sing sadly no longer exists.
No, they went the way of many a cool DS developer, unfortunately. But
man, that Hotel Dusk is such a good game.
I really enjoyed that one. Yeah, it's very
such a
very unique,
creative, and unique thing. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, had a lot of character. So I was looking forward to getting into this one. I knew very little about it. Actually, I knew nothing about it other than that Sing developed it. It has some things in common with Hotel Dusk, but it also is. It feels like it's also kind of its own thing. So in this, you play as an FBI agent in. You'll like this. It takes place in Pennsylvania, actually.
Hey,
in Clockford, which is. Clockford, Pennsylvania.
Good old Clockford. I was just there.
Yeah. Probably, go to that, the FBI field office or whatever. That's what they got in Clockford, apparently.
Clockford, not a real place. Just want to be clear. I just confirmed on Google.
Why would
exist.
they just invent a place from this game? I'm pretty sure,
And why would they drop it into Pennsylvania?
Yeah. Pretty sure it's a real place. I don't know. But anyway,
just because you haven't been there doesn't mean it's not real. Yeah, exactly.
Right. I've been there in the game. Like, they've got all these locations. It must be real. But anyway, so you're playing as this FBI agent who, I don't even know where to start with this. The plot is very convoluted right from the get-go. In fact, they spend a great deal of the early hours of this game just sort of getting everybody caught up to speed. But basically, so 19 years ago, There was a series of killings in Clockford, Pennsylvania, which became known as the Providence killings because of the sort of calling card the killer would leave at the scene of each crime. And they were never solved. And, as many mysterious detective story crimes go. And so 19 years later, there's been another murder which has the same sort of calling card. So it's got them thinking, oh man, is he back? Is the Providence killer returned to strike again in Clockford? And it's up to this FBI agent to get to the bottom of it. So fun premise. So it's kind of typical detective game premise, but it's fine. It's similar to Hotel Dusk in that you hold the DS like a book, and so a lot of the time you have the character you're talking to on one screen and then the list of actions on the other screen. But it's also just a fun little touch that I feel like really hasn't been revisited since the DS.
Yeah. I mean, it worked elegantly on the DS because both of those screens were kind of the same size.
Yeah.
And they were not trying to make one of them 3D and the other one not either. So,
right. I think the 3D on the 3DS would actually not work if you held it that way. Is that right? Because your eyes are not oriented that way.
Right. Yeah. It's kind of using the camera at the top to kind of track your eyes.
Yeah. So, but anyway, nice to come back to a game that does this.
Yeah.
What it does very differently than Hotel Dusk is Hotel Dusk had those great sort of pencil sketch animations of all the characters you met. And they would very slightly animate as you were talking to them. They would just to reflect whatever mood the character was in.
Right.
Again, does not do that. And what they have opted for this time are what looks like photos of people, which are kind of sparsely animated in the same way as Hotel Dusk. So it just looks like they either shot some video of them and pulled out keyframes, or just stitched together all these photos of people doing similar reaction shots like you would get in Hotel Dusk. And occasionally,
actual photographs of what would otherwise be sort of full motion video, but it's real actors.
Yeah, the real
happening.
People.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and eventually, occasionally there will be short video clips. So if something dramatic happens, you'll get a reaction shot from somebody. But the effect that this has in the game is it is just so cheesy. It looks like, I don't know, it looks like you're playing an FMV game from the 90s where, it was on Sega CD or whatever, and just oh man, we can do video in video games? Why not? That we should definitely be doing that, right? Right. It just looks so goofy compared to those very charming Hotel Dusk characters. It is I probably spent the first 30 minutes or so of this game just trying to be okay, I just gotta that's what we're doing this time. It's fine. Just gotta get used to it. It's very silly.
Yeah, it's a bummer.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it holds the game back or anything, but it's just they went with a different style this time, and didn't land quite as well as Hotel Dusk, but it's fine.
Yeah, and I mean, Hotel Dusk sort of art style is very distinct. So yeah, I can sort of see why they wouldn't want to go to that well over and over and over again. But
right.
Yeah. Weird that they landed on that.
I like that it's it's kind of distinct from Hotel Dusk, but I don't know. Maybe if they made a sequel to this, they would have figured out a way to make it look a little less jarring and weird. Kind of like you're playing a Mortal Kombat detective game or something. But like I said, you're playing as this FBI agent, and you have your partner you've been partnered up with for a very short period of time when the game begins. That is also an interesting change from Hotel Dusk, in that you have this sort of back and forth partner dynamic, which I actually enjoy. It feels like you're playing, I want to say like an X-Files game. I was going to say Twin Peaks, but there was just the one guy in that. But instead of the main character just monologuing to himself for a lot of the game, usually he is bouncing ideas off his partner, which is interesting.
Sure.
What I thought was really hilarious about the opening hours of this is you have so you're playing as this guy, FBI agent Jonathan Weaver, goes by Jay, 31 years old, investigating the possible resurgence of the Providence murders. they keep going back and referencing the murders in the original series of killings. And what you learn eventually is that one of the killings, actually the last set, was like a family, or at least the parents. They were both killed by the serial killer. And they left behind their 2 kids. One of them, Jonathan, 12 years old, it said like, oh yeah, he was injured, had to go to the hospital. And I just like started thinking at this point, okay, so wait a minute. So you got this kid, you got Jonathan, 12 years old, 19 years ago. So he'd be 31. Is anybody else? Am I the only one seeing this? They keep talking about how at one point Jay's partner brings up like, oh, we should go like talk to your dad about this because for some reason they believe he may have information that would like be a lead or something in this case. And Jay mentions like, oh, we can't really go talk to him because my dad was murdered 19 years ago. I'm just like, okay, are we just building towards like the big reveal at the end of this game? Like he's going to be the little kid because like you guys are the FBI agents. You should probably be putting some of this together.
Right. Also, this seems like a conflict of interest and somebody should have intervened. Yeah.
Right. Okay. But
call HR.
So to my relief, like maybe an hour later, they just come out with it and the guy explains to his partner, it's like, oh yeah, by the way, I was the little kid in the Providence murders. That was my dad.
To which his partner says, no shit.
Yeah. I'm just like, oh, this is a surprise to you?
Yeah.
But now I'm just like, well, so is this actually worse than before? So we've got the guy, now that we know everything's on the table, he just like goes out and starts investigating this open case from 19 years ago that he was like personally involved in. And also, like, his parents were killed as a part of it.
Yikes.
So now I don't know what to think. That was just this weird guy going around, like, trying to figure out what happened to his parents 19 years ago. Because starting out, he's like, yeah, we're going to get this Providence killer. If it turns out that actually is who this guy is. And, we're really going to get him this time. And he just seems like a determined FBI agent. Like, he wants to crack the case. But now it's like, oh man, you have all this baggage tied onto it as well. This is weird. I don't know what's going on with this guy. So I'm kind of glad that they got that out there. But I was really like hoping on some level that they were going to try and make it a big reveal at the end. There's still the question about what happened to his brother, because his brother was like not seen again after the crime. Also very weird and not really referenced at all. But maybe they'll just do one completely silly reveal every chapter.
I have theories. I'm interested now.
Yeah,
I was not played a minute of this.
I was like, oh, his brother's the killer. But then I was like, oh, that would have meant he was like 10 years old when he killed 5 people. So that would be very weird.
That's a very different TV show.
Yeah. So, very interesting premise. Very, very curious to see where they're going with it. Oh, man.
Sounds a little more maybe heavy-handed than the Hotel Dusk experience. I think Hotel Dusk was sort of subtle. Like, they had a lot of layers to it. You really had to kind of work to kind of extract information from it. This seems a little more obvious.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm still in the opening hours of it.
Okay.
It just cracks me up how like mysterious they were being at the start, where just his partner somehow had no idea that this was the guy's history. And then at the same time, he's making a bunch of reference like, oh man, sometimes I still think about the incident in my childhood. You're just like, okay, I'm going to stop you right there. What incident?
When I got cut from the Little League team.
Right. So some potential silliness aside, it's fun to just play a game that is very story focused like this. It feels like it's may end up being a little more on the like visual novel side of things than Hotel Dusk was.
Oh, gotcha.
You did a lot of like walking around and solving puzzles in that game, when I remember. But on this one, so far, it's just been a lot of dialogue, which is fine. But just another sort of way it differs from Hotel Dusk.
Mm-hmm.
Gameplay-wise, it's very similar, because you go to all these different locations and talk to people. The kind of signature mechanic going on is you have the ability, like inexplicably, perhaps brought on by just the trauma of having your parents murdered, or however they're going to explain it in this game. Whenever you go into a scene where a crime has been committed in the past, you can like somehow see a vision of that same scene from 19 years ago.
Oh.
And then you basically just play like Photo Sleuth or whatever and try and identify the differences between both scenes on the left and right screens.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
So, I mean, it's kind of funny because you did similar things in Hotel Dusk where you're just like, well, where is the evidence in this room? I need to like walk around and check all the drawers and open all the cabinets and everything and figure out what's going on.
Right.
But in this one, it has this weird sort of time, like not really time travel, but just like temporal element that they're playing around with. Because these two cases are potentially connected. Your
spidey senses.
He's got his spidey sense.
Yeah.
He's got his time sense or whatever.
What was the thing in the Arkham? Oh, detective vision.
Detective vision, yeah.
Batman could go into Dark Knight detective mode, yeah.
Yeah, this is another thing I love about it, is that what they call his special ability to see into the past is past vision.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, okay, great, sure. Let's go with it.
I think that you just came up with a new name for memories.
It's like, oh man, reminds me of something in my past vision.
Ugh. All right. Well, this sounds goofy, but it sounds like maybe you're kind of divining some entertainment from it.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't expecting it to just be like this incredibly straight-laced, just crime drama. Because like all of the other same games I played, they're a little bit silly at times.
Yeah.
But like juxtaposed with the very real people who are playing all the characters in this game, and then they're just throwing stuff around like, oh yeah, I'll just check my past vision, and like combined with the silly revelations that they're just keeping secret from his partner the entire time. It's like, oh man, this is it's a little goofier than I was expecting, or maybe like unintentionally so.
Right. Well, geez, it's kind of I'm not sure if this is your takeaway, but a bit of a bummer that, Sing is kind of a one-hit wonder. Like, I mean, Hotel Dusk is so kind of well regarded.
Yeah.
If you go back to any list of like best games on the DS, Hotel Dusk is going to be on there. But again, is not. You know what I mean? And they made other games too. There's a sequel to Hotel Dusk even, and none of that stuff is as sort of well loved as Hotel Dusk, and it's just unfortunate that they were never able to kind of like, achieve that level of regard again.
Yeah, I mean, Hotel Dusk was already like pretty niche title. I can't see that ever really getting the wide appeal of something like, Nintendogs or whatever people were playing on the DS.
Sure. But it's cool that there was a place for a game like that to rise up on the DS, absolutely.
And it's too bad the guy, or at least I think the director, went on to create, he made that Chase Cold Case Investigations game on the 3DS. I don't believe that was incredibly well received. But it at least showed that, like, oh yeah, there is sort of a space to keep making these things.
Did they do the, was the Jake Hunter, wasn't he like a psychic detective or something like that
Jake
too?
Hunter.
Wasn't that? Is that a thing I made up? Let me Google.
I don't know what that is. Psychic detective.
Jake Hunter.
This is not Pierre the Maze Detective. This is his cousin who's psychic.
Yes. Jake Hunter, known in Japan as Tante Jinjugi Saburo, is a mysterious adventure game series originally developed and published by Data East in 1987.
What?
So no, this is not connected to that.
Why do you know about this?
Arc System Works, because there was a series of DS games and 3DS games that were Jake Hunter. What's the subtitle? Jake Hunter Detective Story. Detective Chronicles. So yeah, there's a couple of different subtitles. Okay. But they eventually came to the Switch as well. I think there's one.
Oh, they're still making them.
That's a Jake Hunter game. Yeah, and in my brain I had some, because they're all kind of hard-boiled cop games, detective games. I had some kind of connected them to Hotel Dusk and Sing, because they sort of truck in that. But I guess they're not connected anyway.
You play any of them?
I don't believe I have. No, I'm looking at these now and they don't look... they look like something I would play, but I don't think I've played these games.
Well, maybe I'll check it out after I finish this game. Man, I'm really curious to see what sort of tone the story ends up taking as I get further into it.
Here's the description of Jake Hunter detective story Ghost of the Dusk on the 3DS.
Oh.
A homeless man's accidental death draws hard-nosed detective Jake Hunter into the shadow of a mysterious mansion, but all is not as it appears.
Oh, what? Even in the mysterious mansion?
Even in the mysterious mansion, yeah.
It was very
Perhaps
intriguing.
that's what makes it mysterious, yeah.
Just an ordinary mansion where everything is exactly as it appears.
Where there are no surprises inside at all.
That is the opposite of again.
Good times. Sorry, that was a weird detour, and I apologize. Yeah.
So anyway, that's again on the DS. Like, unlike Hotel Dusk and its various sort of sequels and spiritual successors, this one's fairly easy to get a hold of if this sounds interesting. But yeah, I'll probably stick it out. I don't think it's supposed to be that long.
Cool. All right. Well, we have one more week to go. We're going to be back next week with Stardew Valley and Hollow Knight. Let's do it. Grand finale here. Yeah, cool. In the meantime, if you need any more video game hangover in your brain, you should follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. And you can always get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about this episode at VGHangover.com. We would love for you to play along with the Backlog Attack with us. You can get details about that at VGHangover.com. Or you can pop into the Discord, hang out with us, talk about video games there. There is also a link to that, believe it or not, at VGHangover.com.
Yeah.
Yeah. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you can get a podcast. And, don't hesitate to tell your friends about the show.
Yeah. Tell them there's this weird show where all they talk about is just strange Japanese detective games from the 1980s. I don't know.
Just this one time. Come on.
One time. Well, I mean, maybe they just started listening this week, so who knows?
Yep. This is their entire experience with us. Yeah.
Yeah, just John Wick and weird detective games. We want to give special thanks again to Hal Binderman this week for our intro and outro music. Please head on over to heavyviper.bandcamp.com. Listen to some more of his stuff. Maybe buy an album or two. Did I mention there's an album with 366 songs on it, one for every day of the year? So that'll keep you occupied for some time.
Definitely. That's awesome. All right, we'll be back next week. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye. Good night.
Good night.
See ya. Bye. Adios. Arrivederci? Is that a thing? Is that Italian?
Arrivederci.